My name is Chloe, and this is the Feed or Flow podcast, where you'll find authentic conversations on how to get your period back and restore your metabolism from years of disordered eating, low-calorie diets, and excessive exercise regimes. No trendy diets of celery juice and broccoli sprouts will be found here. Rather, my mission is to teach you balance and how the foods you've most likely cut out of your diet are the very ones that are essential for health. It's time we stop fearing food and embrace all that it can do for us. Food freedom, vivacious health, and a monthly menstrual cycle is possible, and I'm going to show you how to achieve this type of wellness without obsession.
Yeah, and I think it's so hard in a culture where we're constantly told that we need to trust our phones more than we can trust our bodies, with calorie counting apps and fitness apps, and you need to portion control this and watch this. And so it kind of makes sense that we lose this trust when every message around us is telling us the opposite, right?
It's kind of an interesting thing if you think about it, that we need these phones and these apps to tell us when we should eat, how much we should eat. And I can just imagine someone, from 100, maybe even 300 years ago, just looking at this being like, what is going on with these people? Like, what is with this obsession with these numbers associated with these different foods? I think that's
true.
Quite crazy to them. Well, for those people who are going on this journey and they're like, okay, intuitive eating, having peace with food and body and my hunger and my appetite, that sounds great, but I go and I eat and I am just flooded with guilt. Like, how do you help support someone who's kind of at that stage where it's like, there's just so much guilt around even the idea of like, I'm hungry and I desire food?
Yeah. Well, it's a bit of an iterative process. It's not kind of, okay, right, food guilt, let's fix that today and then we'll move on from it. Food guilt, if we think about that word guilt, is in the English dictionary, is I actually don't know the definition off the top of my head, but it kind of alludes to the fact that we've broken something or we've committed a crime. And we have all of these rules that we are given, that we build up over time through all the different things that we're told, and they've been learned. And because they've been learned, they can be unlearned. They weren't there at one time in your life. But there's a reason why intuitive eating kind of has these 10 principles. And there's a little bit, I would say, whilst we don't move through them in a step-by-step process, there's a little bit of an order to the work in which we might do. And that's where we'll start with looking at perhaps the principle number one is rejecting the diet mentality. So we might look at learning more about weight science and diet culture and how this has impacted you as an individual, and how this has affected your life, how it's interfered with your life behaviorally, psychologically, how it might have interfered with relationships, physically. So we're kind of really delving down into, well, what have you already tried in this space, and what has the cost been of doing so? Because it's not until we've kind of done some of that work and really figuring out, what are you doing this in the service of? Why does this work matter to you? And an example might be, well, you might have a lack of flexibility around eating. You might want to be able to eat out with your boyfriend or partner, for example, and not have this constant worry and guilt hanging over you. You might want to free up your brain space. A lot of people's brain, if they think about it like a pie chart, is kind of, many people I work with, it can be anywhere from like 40, 50, 60, 90, 100% of their brain is just consumed by all of this all the time. And so I often ask, what percentage of your brain is consumed by this? And what would you actually like it to be? Maybe you want it to be more like 20% or 10%, where, food is a part of your life, but it's not a really big part of your life, and it's not a negative part of your life. And so we look at, what's this holding you back for, and what is this, what would this create space for if you didn't have this issue in your life? And we're really looking at in that sense, we're kind of looking at values, like what matters to you as a human, because without that, and without that kind of vision and that desire and that awareness of what it is that you want, and how this is affecting your life, it's kind of difficult to take some steps and to get clarity around what that next step might be. So in terms of challenging rules, we do like work around that initially, because there's going to be some discomfort, and you're going to have to lean into that discomfort, and challenge yourself, but in the service of these larger desires. And then we look at, when it comes to challenging the rules and the guilt, we might initially make sure that the person is really comfortable with knowing what enough means. So how to make sure that you're biologically feeding your body enough food, because if you start challenging yourself by eating one of your problem foods, and chocolate, for example, and you're kind of subtly a bit hungry, or you've not eaten adequately enough throughout the day, it's kind of setting yourself up for being in a vulnerable position to potentially feel out of control and think, well, I can't be trusted around this food. I knew it wouldn't work, and I'm just going to have to
perpetuate that cycle of not trusting, and like, see, this is like, I get that a lot with my clients who are in the restrict binge cycle, and they're like, see, I can't be trusted around bread because at night I just ate the whole loaf of bread, and so then they restrict in the morning, and then they eat the whole loaf of bread again, and it's this whole idea, they think that they can never eat bread, but they don't understand it's because they didn't eat at all during the day, so naturally the body's going to want to eat the whole loaf of bread at night.
Exactly. And I think when people think about intuitive eating, they're like, right, well, I just need to just get started and eat and give myself permission, and then I'm done, and then I'm intuitive. And there's so much work behind that, and it doesn't need to begin with giving yourself permission. And I think there's a misconception that it's just about giving yourself permission to eat whatever, whenever. And yes, it is, but not with regard to how that feels for you and your body. So a lot of the work we do initially is setting up those foundations, making sure that you feel safe, so that we can move at a pace that feels comfortable for you. And really what we need to do is identify what those rules are, what those problem foods are, and bit by bit by bit challenging them. It might be, I don't know, a recent example. Well, I've had bread at breakfast, I've had toast, I can't eat bread at any other time throughout the day. And so we might go, right, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10 this week, with everything else going on in your life, what level of challenge are you willing to take yourself to on a scale of 1 to 10 in the service of your desires that we've kind of listed, why we're doing this work? And they might say, do you know what? I've got a really difficult week. I've got a lot going on at work. I'm emotionally feeling quite challenged at the moment. I'm actually willing to take myself to a 3. And so we're kind of like, well, what does that look like for you? What might that be this week? And for some people it might be, it can be anything. And I think that's why this work is so person-centered, in that it's, really centering that individual as the expert of their own body, and helping them move it a way that feels comfortable. So it's we might do that, and then they might come back and go, that was absolutely fine, I'm ready to do the next thing. Or it might be like, oh god, that brought up some discomfort, let's go into that, let's talk about that. What is that? So when we talk about how to eliminate guilt, it's complex. It's a complex question.
Well, and it's going to be different for everyone too. And I like how you said that, like, this isn't just a one and done thing. Like, great, got rid of food guilt. It is, if forever not forever, you will get to the point where you don't feel guilty about it, but it is an ongoing journey, and you kind of just learn day by day. I really love, Katherine, that you just kind of mentioned this scale. I think that that's really cool. This idea of like, okay, we're not just, it's like we're taking into account your life so that things aren't too overwhelming. But with this scale, we're not at 0. We are going to take a step forward. It's just whether we take a huge step forward or a little step. So I like how it is very like forward moving, like we are making a step where we're going to do it in a way that doesn't have you completely freak out and then have you just like not do it, then feel bad for not doing it. And that can start off a whole thing. So I love that it's like, okay, what's the small thing that I can do this week that is going to help me but not be too overwhelming? And some weeks I have clients that are like, I'm just ready for it. Like, let's rip the Band-Aid off. Let's just do this. Like, I could take a big step, but sometimes it takes like 7 weeks of working with them to get them to that point where they can take the big step forward. And they're like, I'm at an 8. Let's go for it. Like, give it to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also I think we forget that when someone's come from this sort of rock bottom, we might initially in the first few weeks, make some great steps forward. But it's also okay to plateau because, it's all right to say, do you know what, this week I'm just going to do the same. And the longer that you stay in that place where you're plateauing, but you're continuing with the behaviors that you've already picked up, the longer we sustain those behaviors, those positive behaviors, the more likely they are to stick over time. So there's definitely benefit in not always doing something new, but just staying where you are and sustaining the benefit or the positive changes that you might have already made.
It's like the time to absorb.
Yeah.
And we see this, it's kind of funny, like we see it in the stock market where the stock market is going like up and down, but then you'll have moments where it's kind of just ranging and it's staying kind of plateaued and it will almost like the chart will go sideways. And what's happening right there is that you're absorbing all of the sellers, you're absorbing all of the buyers, and you're coming to this equilibrium where it just kind of like, this is the floor price now. Like this is where the market thinks that the stock should be priced at. This is the floor. And then you can move on to like greater heights there, but you kind of have to like absorb and build up. Anyways, I always like correlate things to the stock market because I think that this ride is kind of like that, right? It's up and down and it's crazy, but overall we want to be moving up and to the right.
True. That's very true.
Progress. Yeah.
And someone once recently described this as like, because I've got this head full of things and experiences and tools and things that I know that can help support people. But it's almost like when you're on this journey yourself, it's like driving a car into thick fog where you can just see, 10 meters in front of you and nothing else. But as you go around the corner and you see one thing, it becomes clearer and you see the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And, we as professionals are here to help sort of steer and guide and support, but it can feel foggy, like, whoa, where am I going? And I can't see the end in sight right now.
Thanks for listening to this short clip from the Feeder Flow podcast. To listen to the rest of the show, head on over to your favorite podcast app like iTunes or Spotify. If your period has gone MIA, you're going to want to get her back. She's important for your health and misses you dearly. I've created a juicy online course designed to teach you everything I wish I knew about getting my period back, restoring my metabolism, and cultivating a healthy, nourishing relationship with food. The Get Your Flow On course is designed to empower and inspire you to achieve full recovery. Head on over to www.flowwithchlo.com to sign up.